tenor of the campaign. And yes, I am happy and grateful to all those who helped me. And I am very pleased to be going back to Washington, and apparently we will be in the minority. We've been there before. In 1994, when the Republicans took over, I played a very major role in trying to slow down the contract with America. I go back determined to protect the financial reform bill we put through. But there was another issue here, and that was the deteriorated nature of this campaign. And at least in Massachusetts, we have repudiated unreasoning anger, vituperation, anonymous smears, and that has to be said. The collective campaigns that were run by most Republicans were beneath the dignity of a democracy. Repudiated. I believe the nature of representation was also being debated. I represent a district and have been privileged to do so for some time that's widely done. I noticed Mr. Pigot complained about the gerrymandered district. And that's why there was gerrymandered. Let me make this clear. In 1961, after the 1960 census, to save the seat of a Republican former Speaker, Joe Martin, the governor at the time, John Volpe, a Republican, and the legislature collaborated to put Wellesley in with Fall River. So yes, this is a gerrymandered district, but they seem to forget who started it. It was done to protect Joe Martin. By the way, under that category of be careful what you wish for, he got Wellesley in his district to keep his numbers up, and with Wellesley came Margaret Heckler, who beat him in a primary 4 years ago. But the configuration that goes from the Boston metropolitan area to the south coast of Massachusetts was done by Republicans with Republican support to help a Republican. That was one of Mr. Pigot's excuses. Another one, I want to address this. He complained that I outspent him. I did outspend him. But I did not outspend the combination of him and the Tea Party and the Western Express and all these other anonymous right-wing groups empowered by the U.S. Supreme Court. And again, one of the things we now have is this threat that the Supreme Court has unleashed so that anonymous floods of smear tactic money can win. And also, as Jim reminded me, I had the media involved here. Let me say, you know, people will advise me sometimes to be more judicious. And with the election of all 10 Democratic congressmen, it appears, and Governor Patrick, one of the things we can Massachusetts has reaffirmed the complete political irrelevance of the Boston Herald. There was no limit to the bias and vitriol they unleashed, and it had no impact. So good for Massachusetts. I also will say that the influence of Fox News does not, in the end, appear to have been very great either. And that is a further tribute to the people of Massachusetts. This was a victory for a concept of government which eschews the anger and the vitriol and seeks to find practical solutions. I regret that we did not have similar results elsewhere, but we can continue to be proud of Massachusetts, and I look forward to working with my Massachusetts colleagues so that we will uphold the kind of common sense that we have had. And I also want to say, and you know, sometimes you have to bite your tongue in your campaign. And let me be very clear. This was, I believe, the first political campaign in America. It's always tough being a spouse in a political campaign because you're made a punching bag and you're constrained from responding. And we were, in fact, Jim and I believe, the first same-sex couple to become prominent in a candidacy for major political office. And Jim took some of the hits, worse because of this situation, and you're somewhat constrained. But just to show that there's no ill feeling, I asked him if I could offer to anybody here, as a souvenir of this campaign, a nice picture of Sean Begat being interviewed, autographed by Jim. What you have were very nice pictures. The pictures Jim took of Sean Begat, Mr. Begat was the one who took exception to being photographed, were a lot nicer than the photographs Mr. Begat used of me. I do notice that if you look at the congressional results, and if you look at each individual race, you attempt to analyze it this way or that way, what struck me as I looked at the returns was the kind of commonality of the Republican vote. And that makes me feel good, because frankly, I was the target of a lot of inaccurate, out of context, made up, distorted views, and they don't appear to have increased Mr. Begat's vote at all. In fact, he got fewer votes than some of the other Republicans. There was but now let's be clear. There is an unhappiness on the part of many of the voters, and they're right to be unhappy. It is our job to keep acknowledging that unhappiness and its legitimacy, while explaining why we think we have a better way to alleviate it, by explaining what we would like to do to make things better. My Republican colleagues have the opportunity now in the House to have this, and unfortunately, I have to say to the mayors, the selectmen, and the others, sadly, it doesn't look like we'll be able to provide any more help for teachers, or firefighters, or for police officers. And I am also worried that while they will not be able to repeal financial reform, they will try to hamper the new Consumer Bureau and underfund the agencies that have to restrict derivatives. So we have a hard fight ahead of us, and I believe it is important for us to say to the people who are angry, we understand that you're angry, and we are now going to show you why there is a better way to alleviate that anger. The Republicans won the House, but they lost a very important political asset they had, and that is the luxury of practical irrelevance. When you don't have the votes, you can talk all kinds of nonsense without having to put it to a test. So I wish they hadn't won, and I wish we could go forward with a further set of productive activities. But we will be very carefully monitoring what their responses are, and I predict that they are not going to be very good ones. Let me close with a little story. 30 years ago, this district suffered a grievous loss when His Holiness Pope John Paul II ordered Father Drinan to step down at the peak of Father Drinan's powers as the creator of the doctrine of human rights, as a leading civil libertarian and lawyer, the man who wrote the copyright law. And Father Drinan had to step down because he had taken vows of obedience that he honored. And there were two candidates who were particularly interested in running for his seat. I was one, the other who decided not to run for the seat, so he didn't get to become a congressman. He perhaps wasn't as well known. His name is John Kerry. John and I talked, and we decided between us that I would run for the congressional seat, but I hoped to be able to support him for later office. And we had a press conference in this hotel. So I returned 30 years later to a place which really began this career to continue it. I am enormously grateful to all of you. I understand that political campaigning seems fun and exciting to the people who never do it. Actual political campaigning, hard work, it's work that isn't always appreciated, but it certainly is by me. And I understand we are all here for the common values we share. But as a candidate, I'm the disproportionate beneficiary. And I would tell you, Kim and I are deeply appreciative of what you did for us to make our lives together possible in a continued way with my serving in Congress. I just can tell you, I go back to Washington in 2 weeks in the lame duck session, and Actually, compared to what will be next year, Dave Duck is probably going to look good. Because we're going to have a difficult time in which the far right wing dominates that party, and they'll get a chance to see what they really can produce. But I will literally be inspired by remembering everything that all of you have done. I owe you a great deal. You all have a call on every single ounce of effort I have, and I promise you that I will try very hard in the next 2 years to justify the confidence you put in on me. Thanks to everybody. Let me just single out some people. Jim Siegel, who started with me on this past Steve Canessa is one of a kind. He's an elected official with his own electoral career who very unselfishly devoted himself to others. We're a pretty self-centered bunch. So when one elected official steps up the way Steve did for me, that means a great deal. To Harry Goral, Kevin Sweeter, Kelly Ark, and others who did such great work on the staff, I'm appreciative. To the staffs, to my Newton and Taunton and New Bedford offices who had to sort of thread that needle between being public employees and scrupulously observing the law and dealing with all of the pressures of a campaign, not the least of which is me. I am extraordinarily grateful to my family, my sister Doris, my brother David was my campaign manager, who came years ago, my niece Beth and my great-nephew Jamie, for all the family members, and my niece Madeline. Family means a great deal, and I really apologize to them because I have been a somewhat absent family member for 2 years. But I do think we can only one consolation is this. It is hard to conceive of a worse set of political circumstances for those of us who believe as we do. The terrible recession that we inherited, that our Republican opponents obstructed us in trying to recover from, so we had a terrible economy, a lot of anger in the world, the Supreme Court decision freeing up money, all the straights off on some of the right-wing media like Fox News and the Herald, who don't even pretend anymore to pay any attention to fairness. We had the perfect storm against us. And we here in Massachusetts, in every one of our districts, we beat it badly. So that doesn't mean we can go to bed, but it does mean that we can, I think, count on continuing our effort. We have taken their best shots, and their best shots turn out to have been average about 37%. In victory, you're supposed to be enormously gracious and pretend that all the vicious lies that were told about you don't bother you. But I work hard at a lot of traits that don't come natural to me. But hypocrisy ain't one of them.